I rise to speak on the state budget here in Victoria, and I wanted to highlight why this budget is more spin than delivery than any budget I've actually seen, even from Labor. And it starts off, and I note the member for Gippsland South's here, it starts off when you go to the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee and you saw the questioning from the member for Gippsland South to the Premier about Melton Hospital. When it was highlighted to the Premier that instead of having funding amounts over the 5 years to construct the hospital that their media release had stated, it had to be confirmed, 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 with no funding. And then when the Premier tried to justify it by reading in the footnotes, the look on his face when he realised the footnotes didn't even state they were going to build the Melton Hospital, and it's not in the state budget. But lucky, there's an alternative. And that alternative is on November 26, when Victorians, and particularly those in Melton, have an opportunity to change government. And a change of government, we have guaranteed we will put the money in the budget to build Melton Hospital, because they have been misled by Labor for too long. It is time they had some positive news and got the hospital underway, constructed, and can service the growth happening out there in Melton. And that is essential. At growth areas, I represent and proudly represent a growth area in Gembrook, and I hope to represent the growth area of Berwick after the next election. I would love to be out there and still representing that area. Some of the things from this budget, some of the things that we know this government will do if they're re-elected on November 26, is increase taxes on first home buyers and home buyers throughout my electorate. As we grow, we have seen land tax increase. We've seen the new windfall tax come in, which is going to impact on land prices all the way across the state. Developers want to get on with what they need to do and have land availability. That is how you reduce prices. It is about supply and demand, and the supply dries up when the government fails to act. And not only that, we've seen increases on trades and tradies already, and on top of the cost increase they've had because of timber, steel, employment, labour. All of these costs are impacting and get passed on to eventually the final person, which is the home buyer. And that is unfair. There is an alternative. From November 26, if you have a Liberal Nationals government here in Victoria, we will get rid of the tradies tax. We will reduce that so tradies can get on with what they want to do. So tradies can get on and build your house without having to put extra costs on every single time they come out and do work for people here in Victoria. Clyde North Police Station. The government promised it, put out media releases, even recently came in this place to brag about the fact that they're going to deliver the Clyde North Police Station, which they promised would be ready, open and operating by November 2022. But to every member in Clyde North, every resident, I remind you of this: the government has now admitted they have not even signed contracts for land. They have not bought land in Clyde North to build the Clyde North Police Station. And they're now saying we might build it before the 2026 election. We might. Well, I'll stand here today and say, a change of government, you've got an alternative, we will build the Clyde North Police Station. There is too many residents down there and too many stories about increases in crime, about people feeling unsafe in their homes, to not have a police station in one of the fastest growing areas in the state. When I travel around my electorate and I speak to businesses, what are they after? They've had support, they've had assistance from federal and state, they want to get on with their business and operate normally, and they want certainty. And every business I go to out through my electorate and talk about it, they want the certainty of no more lockdowns. They want a government who can come out and say, we're going to let you operate. Any chance or change we have in the COVID pandemic, we'll be working with you to ensure that you can continue business. We want to make sure that they've got the certainty so they can invest in the future, so they can get the staff they need to increase and grow their businesses. It is essential to the services and the businesses out throughout the Gembrook and hopefully future and Berwick electorate. The 000 crisis here in Victoria, this budget, the Ashton report, has all highlighted one thing. Every time the Victorian government have come out and said it's COVID, we now know from their own report that in 2016, the Victoria Police, the fire services and ambulance services had all gone to government and said, 000 is causing delays, we need to fix it. 000 is creating issues with people calling in and we are not getting our services out on time. That is in 2016. The Ashton report, the government's own report, said this has continued through up until COVID. And then when COVID hit, there was no plan to how to deal with the surge capacity that they were going to get within 000. And what have we seen? We've seen up to 21 people die because of the failures of the government with the investment, the training and having people available on 000 and in our health network. An absolute and utter failure. During the 2 years of the COVID period, when we were at the peak of which the Premier will say that's the reason we had all the issues, they cut staff for ambulance call takers at Esther. 2.3 full-time equivalent staff less over that 2-year period than what there was going between 2016 and 19. The Premier said they met every target in Esther since 2016. Each and every target was what he said here in this place. And then when we came out with his own annual reports that said that wasn't the case, he doubled down and misled this place again and said that they met those targets every time. When your own reports are coming out saying they don't, that's a problem. There is an alternative. A change of government on the 26th of November. We have already committed. We will make sure the 000 service works. We will have the staff required to answer your calls. We will ensure we will work with the unions, the staff, the management, whoever it takes, to ensure that we can change the training, change the operations and the structure. So when one group, police, ambulance or fire services, are quieter and another has a surge, that staff can transfer across through systems so every call is answered within that 5 seconds, because that's what Victorians deserve. That's what everyone deserves. When it comes to Victoria Police, the Victoria Police Association were calling for more police, 1,500. And this budget has only delivered 502. That's 1/3 of what the request was from the Police Association. There are staff shortages throughout Victoria Police. Laverton North Police Station has been closed for eight weeks. 8 weeks. When asked in PAYAC, the government couldn't tell how many 8-hour shifts where 24-hour stations were not offering customer and service, front counter service, for an 8-hour period or more in the last 8 to 10 weeks. They could not let us know how many were closed. And now we're hearing today that Victoria Police are being called out more and more for the mental health crisis we've got here in our state. Now, I've worked on the van. You go out and you support the paramedics here in Victoria when required for someone who's agitated, violent, there's safety risks. But now they are being called out to more and more mental health emergencies, mental health cases, because there's a lack of ambulances and they have to then transport them to hospital. This is taking vital resources from Victoria Police off the roads. And we've committed, November 26, we'll work with the Police Association to ensure that we can get the police back out where they need to be, protecting Victorians. We will rebuild the service to make sure that we can work with people on the road and have vans where they need be, protecting and preventing crime here in the state. Beaconsfield Railway Station. I've campaigned for Beaconsfield Railway Station for a long time, and the failure to put money in to upgrade that station is appalling. And we're not asking for a new, modern, super railway station. We're asking for minor upgrades at the moment. Some cover so people don't have to wait out in the sun and the rain. At the moment, people living with a disability have to walk down to, or you go in a wheelchair down to the other end of the train station to get onto a train or off the train. Doesn't matter on the temperature. If it's bucketing down rain or 40 degrees, they have to wait with no cover at the other end of the railway station, and that's simply just not fair. It wouldn't take much to make sure there's cover down that end of the station so people living with a disability have the same protections from the environment that everyone deserves when they go to a railway station. The toilets are closed. We've asked for them to be open for a long time. The government's answer was it's not a manned station. You can't have the toilets open because it's not a manned station. Yet, in Hallam, they managed to put toilets onto a platform at a non-manned station only 12 months before they knocked the station down and rebuilt the whole station. To be honest, Acting Speaker, we'd be happy to take the second-hand toilets and put them down. We've already got the plumbing there, put them at the Beaconsfield station because people are already and highlighting the issues by having no facilities at the Beaconsfield railway station. An alternative to that on November 26 is we'll ensure that those people living with a disability at Beaconsfield railway station are treated fairly, and we'll have toilets opened at that railway station. FRV and CFA. We know there was a campaign from the government to form FRV merging CFA and MFB, and we now know that it was more about the political spin than its outcomes that they have aimed to achieve. Point one, the EBA, when you've merged the two systems, is still a Division A and Division B, effectively MFB and CFA. A person doing an extra staff member at Vermont on a day shift can't go across to Boronia, just 11 kilometres away, if they're one short. Boronia have to get someone from the Division B contract, not Division A. That can mean Boronia, and this has happened, has had a person travel from Warrnambool to come and do overtime in Boronia, whilst a person at Vermont is a spare on the shift and can't literally travel 11 kilometres to support them. We've seen in this EBA positions, because it is so poorly written in the cost impact, where you can travel up to Mildura from Pakenham to do overtime and you get 650 kilometres assistance for your travel. You get overtime rates for 6.5 hours for your travel. You get that on the way up and the way back of a night shift. If you're doing 2 night shifts, you get that 4 times, up, back, even though there's only 10 hours between shift and you wouldn't be able to travel back. What's worse, there's occasions where this has happened and the person getting all of those allowances and overtime hopped on a chartered plane and flew up at the expense of FRV and still got all those allowances. It's such a poorly written document, and it's still creating the division that this government promised to fix. It's actually worse. The division in there now is worse. And until you have one EBA that covers all, you're never going to see changes. And it's costing Victorians a fortune. It is costing Victorians a fortune. And in that, we asked in the parliamentary committees, what are the community safety outcomes that have improved to justify a $915 million budget up from $600 million? And the answer? We'll have to take that on notice because no one has any idea if there's any improvements. So let's have a look at the one improvement that should happen. Structural fires confined to room of origin. The actual for 2021 was 83.9. The expected outcome this year is 78%. They are now getting to fires and they're going outside of the room of origin, which is the key point to clarify and justify what fire services do. Also, the response times are dropping from 85.1 where they're reaching their target to 81 across Victoria. That's a deduction in the amount of time it takes to get out to protect Victorians. We're spending more money for worse outcomes. This isn't the firefighters' fault. This is simply an error from the government in the way they've set up FRV. We will fix it. FRV needs to make sure that they can get out the door on time every time, and we'll work with whoever it takes to put community safety first. This budget is highlighted by the fact it's more spin and no delivery, not just for my electorate, but for all of the services across Victoria.